Great sunrise, family. I'll be getting started with you in a second. Give me a second. Welcome, family. We're going to complete section 1, chapter 1 now on Colson Whitehead's The Intuitionist. We're going to be completing chapter 1 today. I see I'm also, according to YouTube, losing some of my subscribers. I went from 707 subscribers to 703 now. I don't know whether that's YouTube, but I'm pretty sure it is because that's the only way they can hit us when we mention certain things. So hang in there. I am trying to get some things done here. Actually, let me go to here. Okay, I'm in there. All right. So I'm going to be also going live at 12 p.m. today. So let's get through this, okay? Beat when Mr. Reed suggested it might be wise for her to spend a night or two at the house. But it's true, a secret part of her wanted to stay in her home so that other unwanted guests might drop in and give her an outlet for her anger. It was rare that she felt this way, relishing, sorry about that, violence. She is mistress to her personality and well accustomed to reminding her more activistic inclinations that the world is the world and the odd punch or odd gouge would not make it any other way. Very disturbing, however, this late business. It's one thing to understand the muck of things, accept it, live in it, and quite another to have that muck change so suddenly and dramatically, to stumble down to a newer, deeper shelf. That's how Lily Mae sees it. Things are happening too fast for her to convince herself that she does not need time to think, to get to the bottom of things, even if that involves taking assistance from this man, Reed. And it is the acceptance and not the aid itself which galls her and makes her pride curdle. It means she owes him this specimen. I don't know about that. I know I'm going to stop and intervene here. A lot of times we think these people, when they do things for us, that means, we don't recognize that we're a higher power than this man, than this pink man and woman. We don't realize that higher powers move through them to make them do things. We don't realize that they can either go with, it's moving the man, it's chess. We don't know that that's the way it works. Clash of the Titans. Clash of the Titans. You got one group of gods over here playing the same game, but they're against the other gods. So what are you going to do? Are you going to, we can stay in a sense of not knowing, and we can be on that level where we feel the emotions and feel like anything they do good for us is something we owe, but not necessarily. No, just see it in a higher ram as my protectors are guiding the are force are employing these people to do and act the way they need to act and accordingly for my pathway. We're not on that level. And too often we think like that, like Lily Mae's thinking. Oh, because we think in black and white, we think in surface, we think in color. But in our real spiritual, real life, that's not the case. We're in a war. We're playing the game. So why not be the player so you don't have to play a hate of the same game that your enemy is playing against you? Once you come into your self-knowledge, because I don't want to speak above no one's head. That's why I say a clash of the titans. There was a group of people that wanted him to succeed. There was a group of people that didn't want him to succeed. And finding his truth. So they put obstacles in his way. And the other one would save him. Her room at the house is twice as large as her one at the Bertram Arms, and twice that again when the curtains are wide. As they are now, and all that forbidden light takes the room, she gets sky in her room at the Bertram Arms, but she doesn't get light. There's a difference. She doesn't know what to do with her breakfast platter. Does she leave it outside the door as they do in hotel scenes at the picture show? Or does she leave it at the side of her bed? Act naturally. Time to get up at any rate. There's not a single piece of dust on the large oval mirror hanging on the opposite wall of the room. Rubs her belly. She should eat like this more often. Misses her suit. She doesn't spend her little money on things that she doesn't need. But she needs the cut of her suit to see herself. The bold angularity of it. The keen lapels, its buttons are the screws keeping her shut. The tailor seems to know what she needed, understood the theater Lily Mae needs to leave the house whole and be among other people. An old man, Mrs. Gravely. Whoever that is, the cook, a bitter old bitch, Lila. Okay. I'm going to stop right there. You know, that's been a problem with me connecting to this book. And one thing I looked up about the background of Colson, Whitehead, his wife is a pink lady, pink woman. And I think a lot of his energies at that time that he was married to her, if he's not still married to her, has influenced him in a lot of ways, perhaps in writing this book, because Lily Mae does not sound or give me the feel of a Black woman. So psychologically, we don't know that the company we keep, the closeness, the intimacy, all of that affects who we are, and it affects how our art comes out. It affects our very being. Now, that's what I get. That's what I get. I don't know about you all, but some feedback is good on this reading. Lily Mae, can you see her? Gray-haired and bitter, for sure. Has hung her suits in the closet, along with 2 white cotton shirts. Lily Mae has never extended that courtesy of a hanger to. Even her clothes are getting the royal treatment in Intuitionist house. Lily Mae packed the extra suit even though she does not intend to stay another night. She doesn't know why. Her suit does not betray the scent of mothballs, which lingers in the closet medicinal fog. Dressed, she's in front of the mirror. Armed, she puts her face on. In her case, not a matter of cosmetics, but will. How to make such a sad face hard. It took practice. Not in front of the mirror or in front of strangers, gouging her success by their expressions of horror, disgust, etc. She did it by lying in her bed, feeling and testing which muscles in her face pained under application of concerted tension. To choose the most extreme pain would be to make a fright mask, a caricature of strength. She achieved collaboration one night while testing a small muscle attached to her upper lip, hitting upon a register of pain a few inches below the high tide mark of real pain. This register of discomfort became the standard for all the muscles in her face, above the eyebrows, under the jaw, across the nostrils. She didn't check with the small mirror in the janitor's closet. Didn't need to. She knew she'd hit it. Her face is on. She's ready to see Mr. Reed, whom she spies through the window. He sits on the stone bench in the garden, polishing his pince-nez, which are never dirty. See the imperious stoop to check for telltale striations on lift winch and seize upon oxidation scars on the compensating rope sheave, all that muscle work, and think the Intuitionists get off easy, lazy slobs. Some nicknames imperialists have for their renegade colleagues: Swamists, voodoo men, juju heads, witch doctors, Harry Houdinis, all terms belonging to the nomenclature of dark exotica. The sinister foreign except for Houdini, who nonetheless had something swarthy about him. Some counter nicknames from the Intuitionists: flat earthers, old nuts, bolts, stress freaks, checking for signs of stress being a calmly uttered phrase when the imperially trained are out running the streets. Babbitt's collectors, this last word preferably hissed for optimum disdain. No one can quite explain why the Intuitionists have a 10% higher accuracy rate than the imperialists. Everything in the garden is dying. That's what time of the year it is. The leaves blaze and desiccate in their dying before twisting to the ground as ash. Lily Mae crunches towards Mr. Reed in one of the city's secret gardens that turn centuries. Victorian row houses, stodgy brownstones, have their backs turned to her. This interloper has dispensation, business, and authority, and there are hungry thousands on the streets beyond demanding closer scrutiny. Keep them out. Keep the dying garden safe. Miss Gravely doesn't allow smoking in the house. Mr. Reed says, affect, affectless. I smoke out here. He brushes some leaves off the bench and motions for Lily Mae to sit. He is not the same man as last night. For a few seconds run anyway. Then the lines of consternation in his brow relax. He puts his game face on, parrying Lily Mae mask for mask. I trust the accommodation were up to your standards. Mr. Reed inquires, messing with her, a job at the clinched room she lives in. Keep cool. I slept fine, Lily Mae says. And the breakfast, how was the breakfast? It was good. The gentleman who brought it into your room, he was polite. Mr. Reed is looking very intently at the ground. He's thinking out loud. Lily Mae thinks, yes. Our usual man called in sick this morning, Mr. Reed whispers, trance-like. He sent over his nephew. We've never used him before. Lily Mae doesn't say anything. She can smell more rain coming a few yards away. The ubiquitous dead leaves clot the surface of a stone fountain, still retaining a puddle from the rain a few days ago. The fountain cherub dances on one foot. Dances to what? To next year's spring. To having a master to dance for. Its tiny mouth cupping the sodden autumn air. What Lily Mae knows about Mr. Reed, graduated at the top of his class in the Midwestern Institute for Vertical Transport, quickly hustled up the ladder in one of the larger departments on the other coast. All the signs of becoming an industry big shot. Then Fulton unleashed volume 1, and the man was smitten. Lily Mae can relate. The first volume of Theoretical Elevators was a conversion experience for her. 2. After a pithy index entry in her intro textbook, Fulton sent vulgarities notwithstanding, dispatched her into an uncharted back waters of the library stacks. No wonder the Institute exiled Intuitionist classes into the dingy recesses of the course catalog. No wonder the tiny classrooms were always so full. The instructors broken and cursed under the burden of such knowledge. Fulton's words discovered and altered Lily Mae early in her studies. She can only reckon what kind of spiritual catastrophe the book would have caused in a man like Mr. Reed, who had dutifully served imperialism for so long. Must have felt the world had betrayed him. What else Lily Mae remembers from the Lift magazine profile last summer? Like most of the early converts to the intuitionism, Mr. Reed quit the elevator inspecting gang proper to preach the new gospel. What was the point? Really, those first pioneers reasoned when Fulton had pissed on every tenet of their former faith. Here's where Mr. Reed distinguished himself, not as a thinker, but as a mule. He did the grunt work. He toiled at integrating the alien science, this tumor, into a larger elevator community, convincing petulant institute deans to teach his heresy. The very thought of it brokered the admission of taciturn and unapologetic intuitionist inspectors into big city elevator inspectors. Departments, there's the story of how he gauged Midwestern into constructing an entire intuitionist wing after a torturous 36-hour negotiation, winning his prize after talks degraded to a coin toss, and a fix at that. It was a trick double heads coin he got out of a candy machine down the hall. A tricky old bird. That's how Mr. Reed appears to Lily Mae now that he has his face on after recovering from Lily Mae's unexpected intrusion into the garden, a vulture. Not the odd pigeon. He was a Lily Mae's apartment, but a calculating scavenger, a soldier. Of course, Orville Lever pressed his soldier into service as his campaign manager. Mr. Reed is not too academic for the field. Men are so full of romanticism that the brains can't relate. Lever's likable chap, but everyone knows Mr. Reed is the brains behind the operation. Anyone can see that. The only man capable of pulling off the election for the Intuitionists. Lily Mae doesn't know why he's bothered to intercede in her Fanny Briggs mess, but knows she'll find out soon. The grim mist of master plan comes out of the pores and pollutes the air in the garden. After a time, Mr. Reed turns to Lily Mae and says, "It's too bad Ori is out of town talking to the good people at Arbo. It would be nice if you two met." I shook his hand once, Lily Mae tells him, at a rally. "Ori Orville, you should come to our open nights. Miss Watson, have you ever considered becoming a member?" "I just assumed," Lily Mae replies. You should know what we're like by now, Miss Watson," Mr. Reed says with a bit of an exhaustion. "As a group, that is, you're one of us." He removes his hand from the newspaper he's been pressing down on. "You should take a look at this," he says, handing the paper to her. It doesn't take Lily Mae long to digest the tabloid article. From the heights of the loud elevator crash headline to the dregs of the final quote from Shankray, nothing she didn't expect, slanted Lily Mae's announces. "Did you see Shankray's last statement?" "I'll try my memory. My opponent and his cronies have been trying all sorts of tactics since the start of the campaign. But I think this incident says more about their tomfoolery than any of their dirty tricks." "He's frothing," Lily Mae says. "Dirty tricks." He has a point. Mr. Reed tells her, his mouth tight. He's talking about the black box, about the smell of rain is stronger now. Oh, he's talking about the black box, I'm sorry. And now that smell of rain is stronger now. The infamous design problem from her school days. What does the perfect elevator look like? The one that will deliver us from the cities we suffer now. These stunted shacks. We don't know because we can't see inside it. It's something we cannot imagine, like the shape of angels, teeth. It's a black box. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Reed begins rubbing his pink hands on his lap. Lever received a packet in the mail. It contained torn out journal entries dating back a few years, and they were notes on black boxes. Everyone's working on black boxes. Lily Mae counters. That's where all of American and Arbo's research and development money goes. There's nothing new about that. If Otis' first elevation delivered us from medieval 5 and 66-story construction, the next elevator, it is believed, will grant us the sky. Unreckoned towers. The second elevation, of course, they're working on the black box. It's the future. It was Fulton's handwriting. They were obviously ripped out of his final journals, the ones we've never been able to find. Obviously, we were very interested. We made a few inquiries and discovered that a reporter from Lyft had received portions of it too. Chancre as well. Lily Mae shakes her head. There have always been rumors that Fulton was working on a black box. She says dismissively. But most of the evidence showed that Fulton was devoting his energies to intuitionist theory, not engineering. He hadn't been involved with mechanisms since he became dean. The evidence you've seen, Mr. Reed says, he was doing a bit of both. From what we know, you have to understand that in his last year, he barely spoke to anyone at all, except his maid. And when he did come out of the house, his behavior was, to say the least, erratic. The diary shows that he was working on an elevator and that he was constructing it on intuitionist principles. From what he can tell from his notes, he finished it. There's a blueprint out there somewhere. Lily Mae tries to get her head around that last bit. At least Mr. Reed is taking it slowly, trying to walk her through it. But still, I don't see how that's possible. Lily Mae murmurs, twisting a button on her suit. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, at its core, intuitionism is about communicating with the elevator on a non-material basis. Separate the elevator from the elevatorness, right? Seems hard to build something of air out of steel. Mr. Reed withdraws a cigarette from a silver case. They're not as incompatible as you might think, he says. That's what Volume 1 hinted at, and Volume 2 tried to express in its ellipsis, a renegotiation of other relationships to objects, to start at the beginning. I don't get you, Lily May admits, reluctantly, if we have decided that elevator studies, nuts and bolts, imperialism, imagine elevators from a human and therefore inherently alien point of view. Wouldn't the next logical step after we've adopted the intuitionist perspective to be to build an elevator the right way with what we've learned? Construct an elevator from the elevator's point of view. Wouldn't that be perfect elevator? Wouldn't that be the black box? Mr. Reed left eyelid trembles unbelievably. Lily May says she thinks of her room at the Bertram Arms. It's a miracle she lives there. How accustomed she is to this small world. How small her expectations are. Which part of Fulton's writing affected her most? The first line that comes to her head is an incandescent flare. There is another world beyond this one, Lily May asked. What does this have to do with the accident yesterday? Mr. Reed takes a long contemplative sip from the air. Think about it, he says. The most famous elevator theoretician of the century has constructed the black box, and he's done it on intuitionist principles. What does that do to the imperialism? Lily May nods, and Mr. Reed continues. Now Shancray's up for re-election. There have always been rumors about Fulton's black box, and suddenly comes this new variable. It does exist, and it's intuitionist. Not only do you lose the election, but everything else too, your faith. You have to embrace the enemy you fought tooth and nail for 20 years. You have to find the box, Lily May says. You have to find out if it's true or not. And you have to find out quickly and set me up as a preemptive strike. Lily May realizes Pompey. It didn't have to be you, Mr. Reed tells her. It could have been anyone. If Shancray can't find the box, he can at least stall until after the election. Fight the rumors by orchestrating a high-profile failure for the Intuitionists and their liberal policies, liberal meaning her. But I haven't heard any rumors. It's been pretty inner circle, Miss Watson. Until Monday, when the new issue of Lift comes out, it's the cover story. Forced Shancray's hand. Mr. Reed taps his cigarette case on his thigh and stares at the shrub in the fountain. It hasn't moved. It never does. An elevator doesn't go into free fall, not without help. He's scared. Yesterday proves it. And as for us, he looks back at Lily May. Let's just say we're anxious to get our hands on that black box and let it speak for itself. Who were the men at my apartment? Are you surprised at Shancray's tactics? That's his That's that he's a thug. He plays golf every Tuesday with Johnny Shush, and they are probably some of Shush's men. The mob does more than just control the city's elevator maintenance contracts, you know. They have a lot of muscle. He looks up at the sky for a long moment. It looks like it's going to rain, but it's not. Not today. He's getting the airy look in his eyes again. So what is it? Lily Mae prods. Well, we'll find it soon. Mr. Reed replies. We think we know who sent out the journals. I think we'll have it soon. This slow debate about the rain, it's not about rain at all, but the fragility of what we know. We're all just gassing the second elevation, she thinks. The new cities are coming. Thanks again for yesterday. Lily Mae says, and for the room, a safe house, Mr. Reed says. He attempts to smile. You'd be surprised how many people have taken an interest in your career, Miss Watson. The first colored woman to become an elevator inspector. That's quite an accomplishment. We're glad to have you in our camp. He pats her thigh. All this business should be sorted out on Monday. Mr. Jameson, our house counsel, will take it to internal affairs and they'll back off. We'll take care of our own. She looks down at the tabloid headline. What about the accident? You will be absolved. Did you do your job? Yes. Then the fault lies with the imperialists and Mr. Chancray, who have betrayed the public trust. Mr. Jameson will take care of it. If Chancray wins the election, he'll have no reason to press the issue. And if he loses, he won't be able to because Lever will squash it. Once we show Chancray a united front on Monday, his goons will stop harassing you. He'll know we're on to him. Mr. Reed again attempts to smile and is more successful this time. You'll be back in your apartment Monday night. I don't want to, Lily Mae says. No, I want to find the block box. So complete is number 11, ruin, that there's nothing left but the sound of the crash. Rising in the shaft, a fall in opposite a soul. And that is the end of part 2. And we will start the end of part 1. Sorry, family. We will start part 2 of this book, The Intuitionist, on Thursday, day 7. Please join me. Thanks. Always remember, true love, real peace, the higher self within you, the power source, the electrifying power source, the soul.